this is Joe Walensky from WritersUA, and I'm talking with some of the speakers who will be at our Austin event coming up in January. And I'll be previewing topics with a variety of people, and I'm speaking today with Mary Connor. Hello, Mary.
Hey, I'm so glad you are coming to Austin. I'm very excited about that.
Is that where you're at right now?
Indeed, I'm actually here in my house. Yeah, I'm in Austin, and I remember going to Win Writers, wow, maybe 8 years ago, and I was just blown away with the quality of the speakers and the content. So, very
Well,
excited that we're coming here.
yeah, glad to be doing it there. And I thought maybe we could just start with you talking a little bit about the nature of your work, the types of things you're typically involved in, kind of a day in the life for Mary Connor.
Seems like my specialty is going into places that don't have much of anything quite automated and figuring out, where we are and what we can do better. Or they're having to make a change. So, say we were developing docs some way, and then there's a big change in development, and we need to suddenly produce a totally different kind of output. How are we going to get there? And usually I'm working in smaller shops, so it involves all the audio, the video, the training, any kind of output that might relate to shared content is usually where I come in and we try to find what could work better. So I'm pretty agnostic on a lot of things. It just depends on the situation and what people are using. For example, my prior position at Telligis was not a Microsoft shop at all. They had switched over to, because they were a cloud-based service, everything was in the cloud. They used Google Apps for Business, which meant using Google Docs and spreadsheets and Google Sites. And so totally learning a new technology stack for how to get things done. So that's kind of my MO. It's like I'll come into and see, what do we have? Let's just work with what we have.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a big change. The one that you just mentioned there, and you said you get involved in a lot of different activities with projects that you're involved in. Have you noticed in terms of trends over the past few years? Is there anything that you're doing more of, things that are maybe less priority than it used to be in the future? Any changes, significant changes in technology? Any things like that?
Um, One thing I have noticed from the unhappy compression of budgets, there tends to be more openness and willingness to see how, for example, documentation and training could be single sourced, not because of any lofty ideals about it should be done, but just because it's got to get done faster and cheaper. And so people are starting to be willing to combine silos, do things like that. There's also a tremendous change towards with with the change, I guess you would call it performance support. People don't use that lingo, but I think that's what they're moving more towards, the idea that folks are going to be solving problems in the field with their devices, whatever devices, and how are we going to get the information to them? And so forcing us out of the box of conventional documentation deliverables, and also going places people aren't comfortable, like creating video if they've never done that before. It's like, yep, that's going to be your new life. You need to get comfortable with that. But I'm also seeing that there's, what was the other one? More, I think another really big trend has to do with, and this is another collapsing of the silos. This is people seeing the support organization and wherever documentation is being created and user support is being created, merging those together. So one question you'll see popping up on the forums more and more is that, oh my goodness, we're finally going to build out a live support site. How do we get our documentation into it? How do we work with it? Or, oh my goodness, I have to build a knowledge base art, a system, and I've never done that before. I've only ever done documentation. Is that the same? So now I see that as a great opportunity, but it's also going to be a great challenge. We're working with parts of the organization that maybe we never very much talked to before, should have, but it wasn't part of how we did business. So,
Well, while you're at the conference coming up, your topic you have is single sourcing and cloud sourcing images,
mhm.
and so I wanted to ask you kind of the genesis of your thoughts on that topic, but also in addition to that, I think single sourcing can mean different things to different people, depending on what you're involved in, and so maybe you just start by describing your experience with single sourcing and what that means to you, and then how that relates to the topic that you're going to be presenting.
Okay. And that's a really good point. Single sourcing means many things to many people. I mean it in the purest abstraction of minimizing the touches. How many times do you touch a piece of content? One of the things I want to talk about is, first of all, the larger um, push towards visual appeal and visual engagement. This is the world we're moving into, and the devices, the number of users, the level of engagement, things have to be more visual. They just have to. And so we as technical writers, we need to figure out how to step up and how can we step up. So that's where I'm coming from. But what I want to talk about are two bigger things. If you're in a shop where you still only have conventional tools, what are some tricks and tips that I've learned about how to single source, meaning how can I, if it's something based on a screenshot, how can I take that screenshot once and use it 6 different ways using my conventional tool set? How can I source? There's also that relationship between vector images and bitmap images. Lots of times my outputs, I still need to have a bitmap output, but how can I be authoring and managing things in a native vector format, and not have to touch it and find easy ways to generate it? So a lot of that kind of work, and tips that I want to share. But the other big one, and this came from my prior job where I was forced into the cloud, is what are my options? I can't be using these client-side tools and I need to share things. So what's out there? So I wanted to share some of the more powerful tools and actually some of the beautifully simple tools that are out there. The other thing that I was going to touch on for folks is that there's been a huge explosion in cloud-based media sourcing. And so what are the major flavors of what's out there? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of the different places you might actually be putting some of this media that you want to share, which might be relevant for folks. So,
Well, so with respect to the things you've just been talking about, um, in is it a matter of if you have a certain framework or methodology for managing images in a single source environment? Are they tied specifically to tools, do you find, or are the frameworks, the methodologies you put together, somewhat the same, whether you know, regardless of what the underlying content management and development tools are?
tools can apply um, limits, right? If you've got a tool that absolutely cannot address something by URL, right? Obviously, that can't be your strategy for sharing something. If you have tool sets that don't work in a server environment and everything has to be local, then that's going to force it. But I find that lots of times, even if you have a very limited tool, you can use simple automation techniques, batch files that you run that will take the shared content and push it locally in a structured way so that you can have your cake and eat it too. So that's another part that I want to kind of sell people on, is that don't say, the tool made me do it. Because if you're clear on the idea of, first I'm going to source everything. So if I'm in an environment, for example, where everything is in TFS and it's all it's a TFS repository where all the code is, and they're going to let me store my stuff in there too. There are simple batch file ways where I can trick my tools into using it, even if natively there's no kind of connection or support. So there are ways, and so partly what I want to do is just to plant the seeds for it ain't necessarily so, or where to go looking, or what to
Hmm.
go ask. Lots of times people are limited because it didn't occur to them that was an option, and so part of my goal is just to put all the stuff out there that I've come across, and hopefully something will be just that jewel that they needed to hear.
Well, yeah, that's what we're always looking for. And in my experience, single sourcing, it all comes down to a lot of very specifics related to individual projects. So it'll be good to hear the various techniques you put together. Well, thanks for taking a few minutes to talk about things on this little preview, and I'll see you in a few weeks in Austin.
That's right. Looking
All right.
forward to it.
Thanks, Mary.
Thanks.